You know, there may come a time in a couple's life where things don't work out and they end up getting divorced, whether they are married or not married. And when there's children involved, it can get really sticky as far as when it comes to custody. So on the show with us today, we're joined by Katie Shireman and John Barlow, who are with Seymour Law Firm here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. They actually have two locations on Lemoyne in St. Martin and also a brand new location up in Wiggins. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Talk a little bit about, first tell us about yourselves. Katie, if you would, we'll start out with you.
Well, I'm Katie Shireman. I graduated from MC Law School in Jackson. I've pretty much lived on the coast my whole life and came back to practice with Tina and John and Dawn, and I've been here a few months, and yeah.
All right. John, how about you?
I went to St. Martin. I'm also from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, born and raised. I went to MC as well, and I've been with Tina now a year, so we came back to come to the coast and work and see what we could do for the people around downtown and really try to help everybody that needs it.
Why, okay, I'm going to ask you this question. Why family law and not something like criminal law or something like, you know, I always think that that would be really interesting. My wife and I are big into watching like 48 Hours and things like that, but I mean, why family law?
Yeah, family law is usually just when people need an attorney. Some things, you know, they can kind of handle themselves, but when it comes to family law matters, divorce, child custody, that's usually when they say, okay, you know, we need to get some outside help.
Right.
But we do offer criminal law
as well.
services.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
You know, we practice in pretty much all areas, but family law is
the big one.
Yeah, it is a big one.
Yeah. Tina's a good friend of mine, Tina Demeron, and I know that you know, I've known her for a while now, and I have a really great group of attorneys out there. So let's talk about common issues in child custody. What are some of the things that you first off have to deal with?
One of the big ones is always going to be child support. Usually getting an enforcement of child support, getting some kind of award. You'd be surprised how many people actually want to waive child support, and usually the court's not going to do that because the state says that child support's due onto the child, not the parent.
Right.
So that's one thing we always try to work for, is not so much to nickel and dime people, but to just get support so you know that that child's taken care of. And you asked about the criminal law. I chuckled. We'd say something at the firm, when it's a criminal charge or it involves your child, that point of life is in the rafters, you know. Either you're facing jail time if it's serious enough, or you're looking at either losing your child or at least fighting for your child. And at that point, I think that's when you pony up and get an attorney. If you get your ticket charged down the road for not having your seatbelt, just go pay the fine. But when you're looking at significant jail time or any kind of custody battle, that's when you really need an attorney.
What do you determines what's one of the determining factors as to which parent gets the child, though?
Well, there's a bunch. There's a case in Mississippi's history called Albright v. Albright, and it enunciates these 13 factors that I say we, guardian ad litem, are these court-appointed attorneys. And what they do is they come in at the court's discretion and they make a recommendation through their report. And they look at factors like which parent has the willingness and capacity, what's the parent's educational level, what's the sex of the child, what's the health of the children. There's, like I said, those 13 factors that they're going to consider. And then if it goes against your client, your job as the attorney is to poke holes in that guardian ad litem's report, which can be difficult. Yeah,
because, you know, it may not always, I mean, you always hear normally the mother, for the most part, gets the child, but it may not always be in the child's best interest.
Exactly. That's the overarching theme in all child custody cases, is what's in the best interest of the child. And like John said, those Albright factors, a chancellor will consider those, and there's a presumption in family law and in Mississippi that the parents are equal. There is no presumption that the mother is more suited to be the primary caregiver as it used to be. And then they take those Albright factors and then they just kind of weigh them, but no, it's not a mathematical formula. No factor weighs more than another factor.
Right.
And they just, but keeping in the back of their mind, you know, what's the best interest of the child. So if one factor just weighs so heavily in one parent's favor, that one factor could be the deciding factor. Or, you know, if you have allegations of abuse, obviously that's going to, you know,
drug use, things like that.
Exactly. So all other things considered, if everything's even and then one factor is just,
stands out.
Exactly.
And I'm looking at some of these 13 factors. I mean, the parent's moral fitness, the child's home, school, and community record. Here's one: the preference of a child at the age of 12. At the age of 12, the child can decide who they want to stay with?
Well, they can't exactly decide, but a chancellor will consider,
Their testimony.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's funny to me, but a lot of parents, that's where they get worried, is their child starts turning that age, 12, 13, 14, and they say, well, John, now he can pick he wants to go live with mom or dad. Well, that's just a factor, because that court, generally if we're gonna bring a child into court, we're gonna ask to go to chambers or sequester the courtroom so that nobody's in there. And you can hear some funny things as to why the child wants to live with one parent or not. And I mean, if your kid's reasoning is, Dad lets me stay up late and play video games.
Play video games. That's what's going through my mind right there.
That's not in the best interest of the child.
Right,
so it's just one of the many factors. And I think it's given weight, but it's not given great deference. I don't think, like Katie said, no one factor is greater than the other.
What is a determining factor as far as child support and visitation?
That's statutorily based.
Yeah, is it? Okay.
Yes, sir. There's a statute. If it's one child, it's 14% of your income. And there's a formula we won't go into, but it's basically net income when it comes down to everything. But it's 14%, 20%, 22, 24, and then the cap, 5 children or more, is 26%.
And then there's a few caveats, like if the family is very wealthy, or, child support.
The child gets the summer home.
They're not going to eliminate child support just because, one parent is struggling to pay. They're going to look at their potential earning abilities, because, we have some parents who, say, oh, well, I can't get a job, I can't work, they're working part-time. Well, a chancellor could say, well, you have the potential to earn more, this is your degree, and, if you're working part-time, look into full-time.
And if they don't pay it?
There are consequences.
Usually contempt motions are filed, and all that is to bring the person back into court and say, look, there's this court order. You've been told you have to pay child support, you're not paying it. And I mean, in extreme circumstances, we've seen people detained for lack of payment of child support.
And they'll garnish their wages.
That's the typical.
And, there are circumstances that a chancellor will consider to modify child support if, one parent loses their job and, they are struggling. That's something that a judge will consider.
Real quick, visitation, how's that decided? We got about 30 seconds left.
Also, best interest of the child. It can be modified. Usually, if parents request joint custody, that's usually the presumption is it's considered that would be the best interest of the child. And then, so one parent will have primary custody and the other parent will have visitation usually, and that's just based on those 13 factors again.
Katie, John, thank you so much.
Thank
if you'd like
you.
some more information, or if you're in need of a great attorney, give them a call. They are located at 2 locations you see on your screen. They're in St. Martin and also in Wiggins. Seymour Law Firm.